Hello and welcome back to Headstrong, Season 8. My name is Louis Strong and I am the host of this podcast. Now, if this is your first time listening, Headstrong is a podcast where I sit down with a number of well-known individuals and celebrities in the public eye to talk to them about their vulnerabilities and key moments in their lives that has shaped who they are. Now, this is the 8th series of Headstrong, and I am incredibly grateful to all of you who listen, so thank you so much. Joining me on episode 2 of season 8 is the one and only Eddie Hearn. Now, Eddie is a world-famous boxing promoter, but he also spoke really poignantly about his own mental health and mental health in general, as well as those of professional sports people and indeed finding happiness in life. So I really hope you enjoy this episode of Headstrong. But first, a quick note from our sponsors, RCK Partners. RCK Partners specialise in helping UK businesses claim R&D tax relief across the engineering, agricultural and tech space. So, if you'd like to find more about this valuable source of funding for your business, head to rck.partners or follow the link in the podcast description below. That is rck.partners. Now I hope you enjoy the episode with Eddie. Eddie, thank you so much for joining me on Headstrong. How's it going?
I'm good, mate. I'm really good. Busy, enjoying, well, I would say the warm at least. And yeah, feeling good, mate. Feeling good.
Well, I was going to ask, where are you right now? Because it is summer holidays, so whilst you are a busy man, there's still parental duties to fulfill.
Yeah, I'm in the UK at the moment, sort of going back and trying to see the kids in the summer holidays for a week or a couple of days, more likely. And, I think our life and our families, there's kind of an understanding of the sacrifices that we make for the business. So I don't see the kids as much as I'd like to see. You know, I grew up with a dad that wasn't around a lot, but when he was there, I'd know about it. And, he'd put the time and the care in for me. And he's kind of followed suit, really. You know, ever since my children were young, they've kind of in for a week, out for a week, and vice versa.
So do you think your holidays are fairly similar to what you remember then now for your kids?
Yeah, it was always, a case of, my dad would come in like a tornado, he'd be away for 2 weeks. Sometimes, I'm normally away for 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. He would sometimes be away for 2 or 3 weeks. If, for instance, the snooker was touring to Asia or something like that. But when he would come back, it would be that same tornado, but a tornado of kind of love, and time. And I appreciate it more now looking back, because I know about the workload and how the battery can be empty when you get home, but you have to almost go through it and obviously give your time and your energy to your kids as well. That's one of the hardest things, and I always remember that, and I appreciate it a lot more now, because I remember he would come back from those long trips, and as soon as he walked through the door, he'd be straight in the garden with me playing cricket or playing football. And for a long time, and looking back now, I think that's probably the last thing he really wanted to do, so it's the sacrifices you make.
What about for you then? Do you find it difficult when you get home to switch off, or can you easily differentiate between being a parent to working?
Yeah, I never really switch off, is the truth. Some may say it's sad, and some may say that it's built in you. I have a passion for what I do. I love what I do. So whilst I don't switch off, I don't sit there and think, I can't switch off, or the reality is I don't want to switch off. If I wanted to switch off, I would switch off. Some people say to me, well, what do you like to do, outside of work? And I do find it very difficult to answer that question. Again, is that sad? Well, if you're doing something you love, not really. It's the thing that I love to do the most, not I like to go for a walk, or, go and have a an afternoon in a pub, and I like those things, but I prefer to work. So that's just the reality of the situation. I think too many people overcomplicate things. Too many people are always searching for happiness. Do what you love, do what you enjoy, and that's what I enjoy. And I don't see anything wrong with that. People will say, even some close to me, are you going to live your life like this forever? Well, while I enjoy it and while I want to do it, yeah, is the answer.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know this is a few years ago now, but before parenthood did arrive, did you have any apprehensions about it? In terms of managing work and how much you'd be committed to it. I know that your lifestyle growing up will have helped you kind of prepare for that. But what was your thought process going into parenthood?
I think it was just, a natural thing that life evolves into is to being a parent. I think you never really think about the responsibilities because it's just a sort of natural progression of life. Again, my dad, and he won't mind me saying it, and I think it's a necessity for all successful people. My dad's very selfish. He will do, of course, he loves his family and family is very important to us, but at the same time, he will do whatever he has to do or whatever it takes. And at the end of the day, you can't achieve anything without sacrifice. And sacrifice comes in so many different forms. Some people, it makes me laugh sometimes when you talk about, I've gone, recently I was in, Australia for 3 days, then I was in Saudi Arabia, then I was in San Antonio, Los Angeles, New York, and it was all in the space of sort of 9 or 10 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you get people, in business class. Yeah. It's like, mate, have you any idea, when you're getting off planes, going straight into meetings all day, you're having dinner, you're going to try and sleep, you can't sleep, you get 1.5 hours sleep, you get up, you're in business meetings in the morning. It's a different kind of pressure. It's a different kind of workload. It's not going onto a building site at 7 a.m. and leaving at 5. That's hard too, right? But life involves sacrifice at all kinds of different levels. And our sacrifice is the workload and is the pressure. And that comes mentally, that comes physically. And, we go through that because, again, it comes back to a love and a passion for what you do and a responsibility for that I have and our family has to continue this legacy. So going into parenthood, it was just, you find a way. It wasn't like, let me just sit down. I'm not a psychoanalyst who sits down and starts going deeply into all these. I think it's a disaster. I think overthinking is just generally a disaster. And if I started to go into it and think about all this and what if that happens, what if that just, it was a natural thing for me to do, and you find a way. But, family very important to us, but so is the business.
But that's a really interesting mindset that you have then, because obviously this podcast is rooted in mental health. So how have you managed to adapt that mindset? Because you're at the top of this empire that you've inherited and now developed into your own. That's, the global outreach is unreal. So how do you maintain that level of, sanity and calmness at the top then? And, thinking, I can't worry about this or this, or is it simply going, hang on, shouldn't waste energy overthinking on stuff?
Yeah, I think priorities change. I think we often talk about, obviously we're on a podcast now. I have my podcast as well with the BBC, and we talk about success, and I think it's a fascinating debate. I love to ask people all the time, what is your interpretation of success? Your definition of success? And the answer is that everybody has their own individual interpretation of success. And I used to be a little bit naive as a younger man to think that success comes in the form of money, running a successful company, buying yourself a nice house and paying a mortgage off and maybe having a place abroad. And, these are all sort of things that don't really determine success, because as you get older, you realize success actually is about happiness, and it's a feeling inside of fulfillment, and it's the ability to wake up in the morning with a smile on your face. That's success. But I never used to think like that at all. So that changes your mindset a little bit. And I think in the early years, I used to work for a sports marketing company, and I was a sports agent representing golfers on the PGA Tour and European Tour. That was before I came in to work for Matchroom, and it was the same then. I was always the one that was up, out till the early hours, up at 4 or 5, driving up to Manchester to see a client and coming back, and and it was that's a work ethic that's in me. I think that when you talk about mental health, I think everyone has their struggles. Everyone has their good days and bad days. Anxiety and depression, I often think about this. You have to be a little bit careful because of the, it's an easy out, right?
Sure.
It exists. There's no doubt. I have bad days. Have I ever been depressed? What is it? What's the level? If you're moping around and you have a bad day and you don't feel great within yourself, is that depressed? I don't know. Have I had days like that? Yes, loads of them. But I think I say an easy out. I don't think people should be afraid to get help and to talk, but we also have to understand that bad days come and go, and depression, bad days, it's always been around, but it's been dealt with in different ways, and the ability to talk about it is great, and I think that's going to help a lot of people. So for me, I think as you get older, that I never really used to be bothered about how I felt, or how happy am I? It was just grind, hustle. It was just like that. Just get on with it. And I think it's funny. As the world evolves and generations evolve, the ability to accept mental health and depression changes. My dad. If I went to my dad 10 years ago and said, "Dad, I'm struggling a little bit. I think I've got," he would honestly just laugh. He would say, What are you talking about? Get on with it. You're moping around. But people realise, and people talk more, and people talk about, the meaning of life and what life's all about. I mean, these are questions now that arrives more than ever, especially coming off the back of the pandemic. I think people are now looking 100%. At their lives a little bit deeper and saying, well, am I happy? And I think that for me, that's, what I have to be careful of is, where does it end? What are you searching? Fulfillment of achievements, and how do they make you feel? Because at the end of the day, if they make you feel empty, then what are you actually doing it for? And that's probably, if I'm ever talking about my mental struggle, I would say that's maybe an area that I've struggled in the past, is fulfillment of goals. So, like, I'll give you an example. When AJ boxed Klitschko at Wembley, it was a record. We had 90,000. He unified the heavyweight division. I felt unbelievable. I was in the ring going mad. But the feeling passed quite quickly. It wasn't like now I'm sitting here going, I just can't believe that, that moment. Oh, I'll never forget it. And it's just, I remember it. And it, I watch it back and with great joy. But as you get bigger and bigger, you search for more, whether that's bigger crowds, more territories, greater fights, global expansion, etc. So then, fast forward a couple of years and we're breaking the record in Texas at Dallas Cowboys for Canelo against Billy Joe Saunders. Again, looking around thinking, wow, we've done it in America. But you just got to be a little bit careful, because it's just, where does it end? And it starts to become, you just have to reassess your goals in terms of that fulfillment and what gives you that feeling. Because that feeling, when we talk about the interpretation of success, that feeling can come from something minuscule. It could come from watching my daughter play cricket or get into the Essex team. That could make me feel 1,000,000 times happier than selling out Wembley Stadium, Yeah. But the old me might have said, no, listen, with all due respect to the cricket, we got to sell this place out. And when we do that, we're going to be on top, and we're going to do this. And, so I just think it's like, you just evolve and you change. That I think that's one thing that I found, and always when I talk to younger people, particularly young men, I always tell them in their 20s, to young fighters, you don't realise how much you're going to change over the next 10, 20 years. Like, the person you are now will actually, you won't recognise them. in 15, 20 years. So, live life in the moment, but you have to evolve with your mind and your feelings. So what was right then doesn't mean it was wrong then. It was just right then. It might not be right now, but that's okay. You have to live in the moment, and you have to do things that give you fulfillment now, not that give the old you fulfillment.
So if we touch briefly on lockdown, was that an experience for you to reevaluate your kind of process then and thought process, or did that slow things down, or not at all?
It was good. It was weird because I'd gone from traveling every week to 1,000,000 miles an hour to really being at home for 2-3 months. I mean, we were very active during the pandemic in terms of behind closed door events. But it was nothing like what I was used to.
Yeah.
And I was at home a lot. I was walking with the kids every morning with the dogs, and I enjoyed it. I think the pandemic changed a lot of things. I mean, it restructured a lot of businesses. It changed the working environment, for sure. I think it changed the mindset of people. I think people obviously want to enjoy themselves a lot more now, travel a lot more. You realise, I think the one thing that I've kind of, I was actually thinking this probably an hour ago when I was in the gym, was you realise that you're on a little bit of borrowed time, and that probably happens as you get a little bit older. I mean, I'm 43, and I don't want to speak too dourly, and I hope that there's plenty of time, but how much time, And I think when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you never think, oh, well, I've talked to my dad sometimes. My dad's 74. I think there's probably no one on the planet that has lived a fuller life. And, the ability when the walls are closing in and your time is about to evaporate, to look at your life and say, wow, what a life. That's a feeling you can't underestimate, and I think that's something we should think about a little bit more. Is that moment when you might be told your time's up, or your time's up, and you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Wow, I couldn't have done any more." How many people can really say that? I mean, I don't think now, if unfortunately that happened, I've had a great life and I've done so much, but he's one of those guys where genuinely he could say, he lives every day to the absolute fullest. And, I was chatting to him the other day. We were driving back from fishing. He was like, he's played some cricket, and I think he's torn his shoulder and his hamstring, and he was feeling sorry for himself. And it was just like, how long have I got?
Yeah.
And when you start thinking like that, it's like, it just makes you get more, I think, out of your life, because I never really thought like that. And just lately I'm sort of thinking to myself, okay, listen, I hope I've got another 40 or 50 years. But you really got to be that guy or girl that when all is said and done, again, sorry to go down this level, but you slip away peacefully to say, what a life. What a life. And that's a very difficult thing to do. I don't think many people have that feeling. You'll have regrets. You'll always could have done something differently, but generally to be at peace at that moment and say, thank you. I'll see you on the other side. That was what a ride.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a hell of a thought process. And also, I love that your dad's still steaming in at 74.
Oh, I know.
Quality.
But he plays for Essex over 70s, right?
That's and quality.
He injures himself every game. It takes him like 3 weeks to recover from every game, but he won't give in. I think when you get to that age and you've had such an active life, you've got such an active mind. Yeah, sure. You slow that down. I think you do evaporate, like I said, or you deteriorate very quickly. So although he's officially stepped down within the business, he's still chairman, president, and I want him involved because I want his mind active, and he's very, very smart, and it's his life at the end of the day. So why would I go back to enjoyment and fulfillment. If I said to him, what in this world gives you the most fulfillment, his top three would be working, and the events and the business. Why? So, why would you look to step down or step away and lose that from your life?
If you're looking to take advantage of R&D tax credits to boost your business's cash flow, RCK Partners can help you. Simply head to rck.partners or follow the link in the podcast description below. That's rck.partners. Now, back to the episode. So let's go then from yours and your father's mindset, and let's have a look at some of the players that you look after, athletes that you look after and talk to constantly. And I just am interested to know, obviously I don't want to know names or anything, but what's that relationship like in terms of availability of coming forward and talking about mental health, if there's ever been that case? Because I know Tony Bellew's talked about it before, but I didn't know what that's like in boxing.
It depends how close you are. Relationships is key to sort of unlocking someone's emotions and mind and thought process. Boxing's got a stigma, isn't it, of tough, strong. And there was a fighter at the weekend, actually, Danny Garcia, who in his interview in the ring after said, I had time out because I've been struggling from anxiety and depression. And everyone sort of went, really? Like Ryan Garcia, another very well-known fighter, came out, took a year off because of mental health, So it's good to see fighters talking about that. And people don't understand, when we talk about, go back to the different types of struggle and different types of pressure. Have you got any idea what it's like to live the life of Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, literally.
Right? People go, yeah, I have. Oh, well, 2-time world heavyweight champion. He's got 100 million. He's got 5 houses. It does not matter. He lives in a minute bubble, right? Where everybody in the world or everybody in this country knows who he is, wants his time, wants to talk to him, wants a photo. He can't live a normal life. If you think a normal life is sitting in a 7 or 8 bedroom mansion, and not really wanting to go out or able to go out, but sort of just kick around in the house and get a few friends over. No, there is nothing he would want more than to be able to go to the park and have a kick around with his mates, right? Or just pop out somewhere and have a coffee, or go and have a game on the PlayStation around his old mate's house on the estate. So that's the sacrifices that come with that, And I think when you lose, particularly, that's when I talk about the walls closing in. That's when that happens. People start disappearing from the circle. The fulfillment you get from winning, and you actually realise is actually not the world you ever wanted to live in, becomes magnified, and you start to realise, what the fuck am I doing? You chased this because you wanted to achieve, you wanted success, you wanted to make something of your life. But now that you're there and you've got it, is it everything that it's cracked up to be? And that's very prominent in a lot of careers and in a lot of, you always ask yourself, when you get there, does this fulfill me? Is this really what I've always wanted? I mean, going back to my podcast, like, Adam Peaty, I had on the swimmer, right?
Great guy.
Like, just brutal, like, selfish, like, unbelievably selfish, but quite rightly so. That's just what is required. But, he would talk about having a newborn son, and literally he'd come home from training and he would say to the missus, like, get him away from me. I need to go into my room now and just rest for 2 hours and come back out and go. These are, you have to be a certain type of individual. And I think fighters particularly don't come from that background of like preparing for what's coming. No fighter really knows. You come off an estate, you come from, a very, very humble beginnings, and all of a sudden you're in this world and you're getting everything for free and everyone knows who you are. Don't get me wrong, early on, I mean, when AJ won the Olympics and started out his pro career, I'm sure he was like, I can't believe this. I've got a free car here. This guy wants to give me clothes, attention off everything. And then as it goes on, it just drags you and it's not a great life, but it's
like you're being used, isn't it?
It is, but it's like there's no escape. I mean,
relentless.
Divide that by 1,000, and that's me.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of like fame.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I go to the coffee shop, everyone's looking at me. Right? Some people want a photo, some people want to talk about Tyson Fury against AJ, other people want to talk about Jake Paul. But that's everywhere. That's in a restaurant, and that's my job. At the end of the day, my job is to engage with the public. And I don't sit there and go, oh, I can't take it anymore. But you'd be driving down the motorway, you look one way, there's a guy filming you, you look the other way, there's another guy filming you. And that's me. Like that, like I said, I'm 1,000th in terms of the profile of Anthony Joshua. So magnify that intensity of not like, and that's, I think, in terms of mental health, that's a massive struggle because there is no escape. Like sometimes if I go on holiday, there's a place that I go to the Caribbean where actually no one knows me. Right. And it's really nice, like just to have a week. And you forget about it sometimes, just with the kids. I went to Thorpe Park the other day. Jesus. I mean, again, this is me. Like, you think Anthony Joshua could go to Thorpe Park or like just a little day out with his kids? Like, and again, no one's going to feel sorry for him because they just see the upside. They see the money, they see the houses, they see the cars, they see the belts. But I don't think people sometimes realise, this goes back to everyone's struggles. Doesn't matter whether you're getting up at 6 a.m, doing your run, sparring in the afternoon, strength and conditioning, living in that small bubble, or you haven't got a job, or you're on the breadline, or you're on a building site, or you're a teacher, or like, we just have to realise that it doesn't really matter what you've got. What goes on in here is very complicated, and everyone can have problems with what goes in here regardless of your level of success. And actually there is an argument that the simpler life means there's less problems in here, but everyone's different.
So looking at the 20th of August, which is fast approaching, talking about that then with AJ, is there something internally in the camp then where they actively work on mindset? Because I know that in the ring, you've got to be resilient and tough. But as you say, you don't want to have any of these worries and issues outside of the ring. So is there something that they kind of work on internally?
Yeah, he's worked with a lot of mind coaches, and I think it's about, look, boxing and sport is all about execution in the moment. It doesn't matter how the training camp's gone. If you don't perform in that moment, I was thinking about it the other day watching the World Championships and now the Commonwealth Games. I find racing quite fascinating. Like I was watching the swimming the other day. Like, you can go through months and years of preparation, but when you stand on those blocks, one minuscule mistake at that level will cost you the race or cost you the medal. And it's the greats like Usain Bolt, like Michael Jordan, Michael Johnson and Michael Jordan, but who can execute it within that moment, and they're the special ones, if you like. Some people can just get it right, not randomly, but on a day, on a night where they're just too good for everyone else. But those guys consistently, Tiger Woods, people that can consistently perform at that level. So when you talk about Anthony Joshua, it's all the sort of 1%ers that can prepare for that moment. If he gets it wrong on the night, you lose anyway. And that was the same with Usyk in the first fight. But it's the preparation, the mindset of being prepared for battle that night, for training, understanding what you have to do, what you have to go through. It's a smaller part, I feel, the mental preparation of a fight, because it's about that moment. It's about when the bell rings. So if you've done the work, if you're ready, if you're prepared, if the strategy's right, you should be able to go in and execute it. So, he will always work on his mind. And he's more like a sharp mind guy. He'll play little games, mind training and stuff like that. And Usyk's the same, actually, with his numbers and his patterns and all this kind of stuff. So he's just an all-round kind of healthy living guy that likes to be in a good mindset. But what changed? Fighting's very different to other sports. It's a really bizarre sport in that you have to go into a ring and fight another man in front of the whole world. It doesn't make any sense. So what changes is more like the individual that you are now versus the individual you were when you started or when you became great. And what I mean by that is you have to have a killer mindset, you know, and when you get what you always dreamed of, are you still that same animal? You know, Marvin Hagler always used to say, it's very difficult to get up and do your runs when you're wearing silk pajamas, right? And that's such a great line, because how bad do you want it now? And that, again, that goes back to the greats. Canelo Alvarez has more money. Canelo Alvarez used to sell ice pops on the street of Guadalajara, right? He now has hundreds and hundreds of millions. Ferraris, Bugattis, mansions everywhere. Everything he always dreamed of when he was selling popsicles. So when you get it, how bad do you want it? Are you still that same kid that would have run for a wall to get it? You know, and that's what you can never underestimate about fighters, because, and that comes down to sport, competition, winning. Like AJ wants to win more than ever. But is he that same kid from the estate that had nothing? And that's very difficult to do. Only the special ones can keep that mentality.
Yeah.
Because if it was me, I'd be off. You know, fighting, no thanks. What, you want me to go in there and have a fight with another man, get my head punched in when I've got all of this and I don't need to do it anymore? But it comes back to passion, a love for what you do, and, you know, doing what makes you feel great and good.
So let's look at media then, because this is something that obviously you're heavily involved in terms of the media, and lots of stuff comes out, particularly when I look at stuff like No Context Hearn, which is, I want to tell you a couple of facts. So on TikTok, there's over 60.8 million views of the hashtag No Context Hearn. The Twitter page itself has over 350,000 followers. And it's all just like outtakes, as you know, of stuff that you've said. What do you think about that kind of stuff? Like, is that mind-blowing to you? Is it like, it's classic?
The guy works for the NHS, well, probably not anymore. A guy called Andy reached out. Everyone thought originally it was me doing this site, which actually, like, it would have been an incredible move. And it's a guy called Andy who worked for the NHS, just DM'd me one day and said, look, do you mind if I do it? And I was like, who's going to be interested in that? Next thing, it's everywhere. And it's just kind of brought me to a different audience, I guess. Like, when people stop me now, I go back to that thing. A lot of those kids who are stopping me have seen me on those 60.8 million, you know, views on TikTok, because my TikTok, you know, and I'll look on a feed, on my daughter's feed, and I will be there all the time, you know, like, and I'm thinking, so I think, to be honest with you, like, the worst thing you can ever do is take yourself too seriously. So the reality is I don't really care. You know, some of them are funny, some of them are embarrassing, but I just don't, you know, again, as you get older, you care less. So, like, maybe when I was younger, I mean, I did a shoot the other day for GQ, right? They put me in some terrible, terrible gear, right? And I got the photos and I was like,
oh no.
Oh. And I was just looking at my phone, waiting for the WhatsApp group to pop up with my mates who have seen it, just going, and true, an hour later, ping, my mates just like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And probably 10 or 15, certainly 20 years ago, like, I would have actually thought, oh, God, people are seeing this, oh, it's terrible. Oh. I just don't, like, you care less and less and less as you get older, you know, and I think if you can maintain that mindset of life in general, I think you enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
So there's nothing really like, and people will stop me all the time in the street going, do that one, you know, no, go on then. Oh, God. And I'm like, oh, you know, like, you know, and I just, but you just got to laugh, really. You got to laugh and you got to go with it. And it's been good. It's been good for me. I can't lie. You know, it's opened me up to a different audience. And my aim is to bring that audience into our business and into sports, whether that's boxing, particularly for me, whether that's darts, snooker, whatever it may be. You You know, if you want to follow Eddie Hearn, hopefully you also follow Matchroom. You understand what I do. You listen to me. You listen to these podcasts, and it's been different. But you know, I don't know. You know, the BBC podcasts, TV shows. Would I have been doing those without No Context? Huh? Maybe not. You know, just as a boxing promoter, you've never really seen a boxing promoter do that kind of stuff before. So it's probably been, you know, and when I do go on those shows, we talk about it. They play clips, and it's almost like performing Seal. You know, you'd be on those shows, and it'll be like, yeah. But that's just like I'm easy with that because I'm not a genius. All right. So however you get there, at whatever makes it work, we have to find a way, and we find a way to be creative, to hustle, to be smart. And that's been something that's sort of unintentionally worked very well.
So are you aware of your power to influence then, kind of in that public spotlight? Because you talk about these small interactions with somebody, and I know to you've probably had hundreds of thousands, you know, but to them, that's a really special moment potentially. So those 10, 20 seconds to them could be a big deal.
It's weird because, again, people wouldn't expect this, but I'm my own biggest critic. Right? I know people think that I'm very flash and a little bit arrogant and like super cocky and confident, and I am confident because I believe that I'm good at what I do, but I'm also my own biggest critic, and I don't struggle to come to terms with people DMing me and reading my book and saying you're a massive inspiration to me, etc. But I had a head start. Do you know what I mean? Like and people, the haters or whatever you want to call them, will always say, well, he had his dad. And listen, I've taken the business to levels he could never have done or could never have dreamed of. But I still had a head start. Like, it's not like my achievements could never mirror his achievements, in my opinion, because he came from a council estate in Dagenham and he built an empire from the rubble. What I did was I came in with a solid, you know, national business and took it global, and I think I've done a great job. But I think sometimes you underestimate. I say this to my fighters quite a lot. It's quite amazing that one conversation can change the direction of someone's life for certain people. And listen, if I can do that's a blessing and an honour. I don't necessarily feel like I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily feel like I have the right or should have the ability to change someone's life or mindset, you know, and if I can, I should use that because that is a blessing. But I say to my fighters all the time, wow, amazing that you can go into a gym and talk to a young fighter or like, and I, because I've got kids, I know Katie Taylor, who they've met, I'm desperate for them to spend time with her because her mindset and her discipline and her work ethic is everything I'd want them to have, you know. And sometimes people have lost direction, lost focus, and just one conversation with someone can change their life forever. So yeah, I don't think that me doing a No Context Hearn impersonation for someone on a train is necessarily going to remold their life, but I do get a lot of people write to me and say, I've read your book, you know, I'm struggling at the moment, this has really helped, this. And it's not weird for me, but I don't necessarily feel like I've achieved enough to be in that position, if I'm honest. But again, at the same time, I am my own biggest critic. Like I feel like I've achieved 20% of where I could and will and should be.
So, well, that's interesting, because I was going to talk to you about your empire, and we talk about the world that you live in and all the fights that get put on and how successful a father you are. And I know how much you loved cricket, and I didn't know if you'd ever thought about that. I was thinking about the kind of the franchise world of cricket and how much that's expanded in the last kind of 5-10 years. You look at the IPL, the Pakistan 20 League, Big Bash, and all the money that's going on in cricket. Is that something that you'd ever consider touching on, or is there just no time for it?
I think it's mad because I played cricket from probably the age of like 10 or 11, and I played for Essex for under 11s up to about under 16, 17s.
Yeah, and you love it.
Yeah, kind of got to like Could he play second 11 cricket for Essex? Maybe. He was never good enough to get like in the first team or anything like that professionally. But I was obsessed with the game. Like I would like play, practice non-stop. We work in the house that I grew up in, which is this house. And I would sit just over there with my bat and I would oil it every night and I would knock it in, you know, and just, I think as I became a little bit older, as sort of a social life started to appear, I kind of fell out of love a little bit with cricket, and my dad didn't. He still to this day just absolutely loves playing. And I do and I don't. You know, I love watching my kids play cricket, and they're both very talented. Like girls, I have 2 daughters. Girls cricket now is just
great. Boom. What a world to be in.
Amazing to watch. You know, it really is, because I went to watch them the other day, and I was like, you know, Isabella, my oldest, she's 12, and I thought, you're actually better than me when I was 12. You know, and the standards really good.
Yeah.
So, you know, cricket's changed a lot. I just think a lot of sports have evolved in terms of the viewer experience and the pace. Like, we live in a very fast-paced world where attention spans are diminishing every second. I mean, I'm the worst. Like, I'll be in a conversation and I will just go... look at my phone, and someone will say hello. I'll be
20 like, emails
what?
through.
Yeah, I know, but it's terrible, really. But that's just a sign of the world we live in today. But that's the same for the viewer experience. I mean, now we look at streaming and we look at apps and we look at, you know, watching on your device. This is the future of broadcast, and cricket has adapted to that. Really, I mean, 2020 was a game changer for cricket.
Yeah, the 100th
Test match cricket was dying to the you know, all these new millennials and Gen Z, what they want to call them now, you know, these new, but they want fast-paced sport. And cricket, I think cricket's adapted well, actually. I think, and I really get a buzz. You know, when we're talking about fulfilment and happiness, on Fridays, my girls go over to Billericay Cricket Club, and it's like a free-for-all. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids are playing cricket. Like, that's hundreds everywhere. Girls under 9s, girls under 11s, girls under 13s, boys. Like, and I went up, I was in the net, and I was helping with the coaching with some of the boys. And I mean, that gave me more fulfillment than probably the last month of work, you know. And I sort of left there going, wow, I'm not sure I'll end up being a cricket coach, but that's just a good example of, you know, it doesn't have to be like, you've always got, like, sport has been my absolute life.
Yeah.
And it still is. But now it's sport business.
Mm.
You must always remember the foundations of sport. And for us, sports now, they are dominated by money, right? And that's just life. But you've always got to try and just keep the pureness of the sport in some respect. And that's the difficulty when you're producing formats. You know, when I wanted to change the face of boxing, we brought in Prize Fighter, which was a quick format, quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals on one night. The traditional boxing fan couldn't have hated it more. Yeah, you know, sure. The traditional cricket fan couldn't have hated 2020 more. Might have saved the sport, actually, you know. So it's difficult sometimes to commercially get it right and not to bastardise it and try and maintain the integrity of the sport.
So looking as well at kind of the way that you manage things, would you ever go into the world of NFTs?
We have. I mean, NFTs, I'm still...
to be honest with you, I actually don't have a Scooby-Doo what it is.
Yeah,
I don't get it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, non-fungible tokens. I mean, it's like, you know, it's think player cards, but in a digital format, which is like... I still
don't understand that, though.
I know.
Because I couldn't see the physical, you know?
Yes, I mean, this is for the new generation again. I know you're younger than me, but I'm still not sold or convinced, but they definitely exist, and some have made a lot of money out of them. And I just think it's a sign of the way that we're going. You know, we live in a digital world. We live in a world where... just some things, I mean, again, cryptocurrency, you know, in that world. My friends spend the whole day trading cryptocurrency. and I'll be in a WhatsApp group. Oh, I've seen this one up today, this one down to that, one that, I can't believe it. Look at this. Wow, we're flying. 5 days later, oh my God, have you seen it? And I'm like, not for me. Why do I want to go through all those emotions that you're going through right now for something I can't even control? It's a mad world.
Well, it's interesting we talk about that digital expansion then, and I know you touched on it, and it's what people talk to you about loads, but the world of YouTube and YouTubers coming in and, as you say, talking about the development of formats, and you see these YouTubers, amateurs, trying to go pro as well in terms of boxing. Yes or no? Has it been good for the sport?
I think it has. I've done a couple of them. I mean, it's not my cup of tea, and I don't think I'll be doing many more again, but it brings in a whole new audience. I mean, when I did the KSI Logan Paul fight, which was watched by millions worldwide, I could see from the first press conference to the end of that fight, I would turn up at my daughter's school and every kid would know who I was. And not because of Anthony Joshua, which, some would have before. Everyone knew that I was promoting KSI and Logan Paul. And, we did the first press conference for that fight. It got something like 2 million live stream for the press conference. Like a normal press conference, like an AJ press conference might do 100,000. 2 million people watching this press conference live. And I was like, wow. Now, can you convert those people? And this is always the argument of a fight fan, which is, but are they going to become fight fans? Are they going to stay in the sport? Well, that's your job. Once you bring them into the sport, and I tried to amalgamate the KSI Logan Paul fight, there was some world championship professional boxing on the undercard, because I wanted to show that audience what real boxing was. You have to educate them when you bring them. It's a bit like 2020 cricket. If you're bringing those new fans in, you really want to teach them about test match. You want them to become cricket fans and then love test match cricket. And that's what I tried to do with Prize Fighter. Bring these people into boxing. And once you're there, after 5 or 6 years, we got rid of Prize Fighter and just went back to traditional Saturday night world championship boxing. Because those people had come in, fell in love with the sport, not all of them, learned about the sport and wanted to see real boxing. And that's the same with cricket. People come in for the 100 or they come in for 2020, they start playing, they join their local club or they watch more cricket. They want to watch the Ashes. They want to watch test match cricket. They want to watch the longer format. But you have to bring new blood and new audience into the sport. And doing that through YouTube, I don't see the downside of that.
So when you're trying to facilitate matches and stuff, and I'm looking at notably two people who are rather active on social media, the likes of Jake Paul and, of course, Tyson Fury, who are active on their social medias, and they say stuff, and, when Tyson Fury goes, I don't want to anyone to make a single pound out of this. And then also you look at Jake Paul going, Tommy Fury didn't get into the country, now, the fight's not happening because of him. How much of that is waffle and just to get behind the head of the other person, and how much of it is kind of like based on legitimate kind of emails?
Everyone's different. Tyson Fury is a genius of getting people to believe what he says, but if you actually analyse what he's saying, none of it makes sense. Jake Paul's very bright, very bright, and that was a situation where Tommy Fury genuinely couldn't get into the country. So social media is amazing because you have the ability to go on, switch on in front of a huge audience and talk to them and tell them what you want. I mean, I could go live now on Instagram. I've got 1.2 million followers and just say, well, actually, I've just spoke to Tyson Fury and he's told me he don't want to fight Anthony Joshua because he thinks he's going to get knocked out. And he would come on and go, I never even called you. What's going on? It's just like, and you think, again, magnify my audience by 10 and you got Jake Paul's audience. So it's just, it's a different world. My dad always says, you're lucky because when I used to sell a fight, we would put posters up outside the local underground station to try and make people aware. You can go and just interact with over 1 million fight fans. I said, well, I built that audience at the same time. But he said, yeah, but you know what I don't like? He said, when I used to do a show, I used to go, that was a good show. And I used to go for a curry and go home. You finish and you got 1 million people telling you if it was good or bad. Do you know what I mean? So there's no escape. You want to go home and go, that was great. You imagine those days. You finish and you go, that was great. And you drive home, get something to eat. Now, I'm like this till 5 a.m.
Yeah.
What's he saying? You know, that's
what's Billy from Blackpool said
exactly.
today?
and then, but over time, you realise. I remember speaking to Wayne Rooney on my podcast and said to him, "How do you deal?" You know, I've read your Twitter, like some of the comments are outrageous. How do you deal with that?
And the comments on Daily Mail, his articles, like.
But he went, well, obviously I don't read them. I went, what? Never. He went, no. Why would I read them? And I just thought to myself, oh, blimey. I've been reading them for years, you know. And that was really the moment I stopped reading them. Really, I mean, I'll have a scroll through, but why? Why would you want to infiltrate your mind with, you know? And I can't say people are irrelevant or the opinions irrelevant because they're my customer. So it's a bit different for me. But when you're working so hard to achieve something, and you have dreams and goals and aspirations, why on earth would you let someone that has no relevance to that, or could never dream as big as you dream, or could never do the things that you do, have a negative effect on that process? It's bizarre. And I worry for the next generation. I worry for my kids. You know, I look at their comments. I mean, someone, you know, one of them might post a picture and it's like, oh, you look this, or you look that, or you think you're that, or it's like, what a world. You know, we might, when we were young, I guess someone might have said something in the playground or something or whatever, but it's like those kids have to read that and then go to sleep with that on their mind. Like, that's not the right way that the younger generation should be brought up, but also there's no escape. So they've got to learn, they've got to be taught. And that comes from the foundations of, like, you know, parenting and the values of life.
So when that kind of video came out of Tyson Fury doing that, and of course, AJ will be finding this out pretty damn swiftly. But is that, you know, because he's obviously focused on his next fight. Yes, he needs to think about longevity and future. But I mean, this chat's been going on for years, whether it's going to happen or not. Is that even still talked about with you guys? Do you bring it up?
I think with Fury, it's like, oh, another one. But of course, you know, everyone's got ego, everyone's got pride, and they're fighters. Again, so for me, all I'm thinking about is what I'm going to say in the next interview. AJ's thinking about, I want to take his head off, because they're different mentalities. You know, so when you disrespect someone, or you question someone's ego or, you know, pride, then they react. You know, these guys are like caged lions a lot of the time. But, you know, you have to also be big enough and thick-skinned enough. Boxing's like, it's not a very nice business at all. And you have to have the ability. I mean, I could go on and there could be 4 or 5 fighters, promoters, fans, celebrities, whatever, with massive audiences slagging me off. Exactly. I mean, it happens all the time. Tyson Fury, Jake Paul. And actually, again, it's just, life's about putting yourself in experiences time and time again. And the more you experience, will become at dealing with it, and the less it will bother you. So, like, if 10 years ago Jake Paul came out and went, Eddie Hearn's a joke, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that, and I'm looking at his followers, seeing 15 million followers or whatever, you know, and I'm just going, now literally I go like, and then on you go. But it never used to be like that. You know, I remember saying to Steve Davis, a snooker player, my godfather, I said, do you ever get nervous, you know, when you're like over that long red in the final of the World Championships? And he's like, no, not anymore. He said, oh, when I first got in that first final, he goes, I was shaking like a leaf. He said, but, you know, you put yourself in that position time and time again. It's just like memory recall. It's like training. You know, these athletes, they train, they put themselves in that position, they put themselves in that physical moment, so that when you need to execute, it's natural. And that's the same. When my first press conference I ever did, I had to sit on my hands because I was shaking so much. Now, I never have notes. You know, you could say to me now, you got a press conference in 10 seconds about this show that I know hardly anything about. I go, okay, bang, half an hour, just talk. But that's just because I've done 1,000 of them, you know?
So now let's go. I've got 2 final questions then as we wind down. We talked about that kind of ever extending kind of goal and target and not sure what it is. What are your targets? What are your goals personally for kind of the future?
I think personally, it goes back to what we said earlier about feeling good and having that feeling of fulfillment.
So a few more cricket nets then, it sounds like.
Yeah, maybe. But then the answer is, when we talk about the feeling of fulfillment, what gives you fulfillment? Okay, so that again goes back to feeling good, feeling motivated. Sometimes you'll get a run where the putts don't drop and nothing's going your way and you're tired and you start going through that sort of, why am I doing this, and actually am I enjoying it anymore? And then all of a sudden you fly out to Saudi Arabia and watch Anthony Joshua beat Alexander Usyk, touchwood, and then a couple of weeks later you fly to Las Vegas to see and promote Canelo Alvarez against Triple G3, and you think, like, this is why I'm in the game. I like developing young fighters. I like seeing young fighters go on and achieve their dreams, create legacy, secure their financial future. I want to, my aim is to take this business to levels that were never expected. And that's ultimately to float this company, to continue the global expansion. And that's probably the target for the next 3 to 5 years. But also doing what makes me happy, whether that's making sure I spend more time with the kids, whether that's why I do a few nets, whether that's why I travel more, see more places. It's just the feeling when you wake up, when the sun's shining outside and you wake up and you go down, you have a little coffee before work. For me, it might be squeeze a little run in, or, I'm doing these ice baths at the moment. I Wim Hof on my podcast, a game changer, right? And I turn up here in my desk here and I go, wow, yeah, that's success, right? That's how my mindset's changed over the years. Whereas if you'd asked me at 10 years, you've been for a run and you've had an ice bath and you're sitting at a desk thinking that's success. Yeah, it is. Do you know why? Because I feel alive. I'm ready for the day. What you got for me? Let's smash it. Like that. That's success. That's fulfillment. Versus, what we got here? I shouldn't. I feel I had too much to drink last night. I just feel I can't be arsed. Like, that's not. So things change, and if you've got that mindset, if you're feeling that way, surely you're going to achieve more. You're going to be more successful. You can have more energy, more zest. You can work harder. You can work faster. You can think sharper. So, like well-being is very important to me these days. And when you get to my age, you start to think, actually,
prioritize.
I want to live really as long as I can here. So, but just feeling good, and that's my aim for the next 5, 10, 20, 40 years is to feel good. To feel full of energy, have a passion for what I do, and whatever that could be. It doesn't have to just be boxing. We could diversify into all sorts here. But as long as it makes me feel good, as long as it gives me a spring in my step, and energy is important. People's energy is important. We talk about those great athletes. Yeah. Being around them is a blessing for me. Like being around AJ, Canelo, Katie Taylor. Like, trust me, you ain't going to feel sorry for yourself. Like, you will leave those conversations going, that's unbelievable. I'm ready. I feel energized. And that feeling, you can't buy that feeling.
So my final question I ask every guest is, what does the word headstrong mean to you? And are you headstrong?
Yeah, I'm headstrong because I think listen, you've got to be cold, right? You've got to be cold. You can be sensitive, you can be caring, but you have to be cold. You have to be selfish. And headstrong is the ability, in my opinion, being headstrong is the ability to not overthink things. I always say to people, when you're struggling or when you feel like you're losing direction, focus on the short-term goals. Too many people look at medium and long-term goals. I want to get here, but I've got, down here is all the short-term goals, and you've got to overcome those to even get anywhere near the middle. So why are you worrying? Everyone should have medium and long-term goals, but why are you worrying about those? What if that happens? What if this? Focus on what are the challenges today. And sometimes when I'm just feeling a little bit lost, or that fulfillment of completing things or doing things, I will just write down 10 things when I start my day that I have to do today. And they can be so menial. right? They can be go to the gym, have a cold shower, walk the dog, like things that there's no excuse not to do. You know when you get people, you say, listen, I'm not exactly an athlete, right? But I try. You know when you get people say, oh, I always row with my sister. I say, Kate, you've got to get into the gym more. Oh, I haven't got time.
Oh, yeah.
Of course you have. It's just like we've all got time, haven't we? Get up an hour earlier. It's not like, I know it's hard. I know you're going to be more tired, but you can still do it. So, like, that's just an important mindset to say that really there's no excuse. There is no excuse. And those things to write down, you can always get it done. Go to the shops. Oh, I need to do this. And at the end of the day, tick off everything you've done. I promise you, when you go to bed that night, you'll go, that was a good day. I made things happen. Right? It could be closing a deal. Could be making a fight. Could be selling out an arena. But it could also be going for a walk after dinner. You know, these are all things. It's just, it's the feeling of actually doing something, achieving something in a day. And those little walks, I have more and more of them now.
Yeah.
You know,
for the well-being as well.
2 hours in the morning, you know, go and have a coffee and go for a walk for 2 hours. I promise when you come back and you sit on the couch, you think, I should have a little 2-hour walk there. You know, you might look at your little phone or your Apple Watch and say, wow, 12,000 steps. I've achieved something today. It doesn't have to be Everest.
Love that. Eddie, honestly, I've absolutely loved talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on to Headstrong. I wish you all the very best, and let's hope the 20th of August goes well.
Fingers crossed, mate.
And that concludes this second episode of Series 8. I want to say an absolute massive thank you to Eddie for giving me an hour of his time to chat to me. And I have to say, it was an incredibly insightful episode. I really enjoyed talking to him, and it was so easy to get on with him. And I hope that you found it incredibly interesting too. Thank you again to you, the listener, for tuning in to these episodes every week. And if this is your first time, please do subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next week then, this has been Headstrong, Season 8, Episode 2 with Eddie Hearn.